1976, the people of Steel Town of Port Talbot lived in fear. A killer was at large. Maureen told friends she'd got 6 flagons of cider at the Green Meadow pub. Police said an investigation and elimination inquiry. She was murdered by an unknown assailant, and despite the detective laying siege to their town, the killer was never caught. They will now re-investigate it to find the killer. A team of experts will reopen the case and try to figure it. Paul fills in the blanks of what they know. She lived, with her parents, actually, in an area known as Burns Crescent in Soundfields, Port Talbot. Friday, the 21st of February 1976, she was dropped off by a friend about 11 o'clock outside the Green Meadow Public House, which is a local pub. Her friend left her outside the pub. That was the last time Maureen was seen alive. She was found at Aberavon, a street known as Pendarvis Terrace. Not sure if there was sexual motive, but no signs of a sexual assault. Strangulation was given as the cause of death. Paul Bethel is returning to Pendarvis Terrace with former detective Fireys. Mrs. Eaton eyewitness. Early Sunday morning they saw the body. She did not hear any arguments at all. In the police report in 1976 there were arguments. Paul Britton says the local pubs know everyone who comes in and out, but they said if strangers come they will stand out, but at those people building the motorways where they are. How do these two things fit together? Paul Bethel said it's a contradiction. This is because you will have people all over the UK coming down to work on a motorway, hundreds of them living around the area. Also there are rugby matches, Irish versus Welsh, going that day, that will have contributed to uncertainty when she was there and how long she stayed. Paul Bethel says Maureen's best friend drops her off to meet a mystery man she has never met before. That the last time she sees her. To this day the identity of this man remains a mystery. Dr. Nellie uses the archives to search for information. There are repeated references to her as being an unmarried mother with 2 kids. Maybe that is why she got coverage of the case. In 1973 3 girls were strangled this summer, while returning home in the early hours of Sunday morning. Jackie wanted to talk to Paul and Phil about the initial investigation of Pauline and Geraldine. These was the biggest murder hunt there have ever been in Wales. The 2 girls would have been hitched to a lift, said by Phil. There was a witness statement taken at the time from a driver. The gentleman looked in the wing mirror, both girls jumping into the car. How did the killer get the 2 girls out of the girl into the woods at night, pitch black? Key to the inquiry was identifying the death as part of a serial murder. These cases remained unsolved, but in 1998 all this began to change. Advances in DNA made it possible to test stains on the women's clothing that had been preserved in the lab. The DNA profile of the killer was about to be built. Jackie meets Dr. Colin, a high-profile case. He got DNA of the girls. By 2000 they had a DNA profile which we could attribute to the semen for both girls and could search the database for it. Nothing was found. He then did the Sandra Newton case. Collins recognized the link, potentially, because the Landasi profile to Emmett was a serial killer, in the breakout of 1973. It's recognized that crime runs in families. They start searching for the relative. Now they can sample a list of names. 9 names matching were given back to Paul Bethel to see if there were any names they could be interested in. Cap'n Paul's father died in 1990. So a decision was made to exhume the body of Joseph Cap'n. Samples from the bones. To see if he was the killer. It was a full match. Joseph Cap'n was known for being a violent man, says Paul. Paul was in the inquiry in 1973 because he was the owner of a white 1100 car, so he was spoken to. His wife confirmed where he was at the time. So they move on to the next person. They also wanted to check Cap'n activities during the time Maureen was murdered. He is now dead. Jackie is keen to find out if Cap'n fits the psychological profile of Maureen Mulcahy. Paul Britton is drafted by the police to create offender profiles. He believes that the pathologist took the view that there was no sexual intercourse prior to being murdered. So his possibilities were that she was drunk, largely incapable, and something went wrong in meeting this person. Therefore, He kills her in a farmyard fashion and goes on about his business. The other one, she was a selected killer because of the crowd. He can't do the normal things he wants to do. To him, Capon is a candidate, but the other two women he killed had a rope or binding put around their front, but in this case it would just be a strange, which does not fit Capon profile. Plus, sexual intercourse was hugely important. Dr. Samantha is a geographic profile. She helps the police on murder cases by creating murder maps which can demonstrate that serial killers are creatures of habit. She is confident that Capon is responsible for Maureen's death because he lived in the Sandfields area of Port Talbot, which is close to where Maureen lived. Offenders not only leave a sort of comfortable distance between where they offended, but also between the crimes as well, according to Samantha. She also says if we include Maureen in it, the distance between them is 8,000 meters. She also believes his first two cases were more planned, but Maureen cases presented the opportunity to do it. A woman that knew Capon well is about to break her 30 years silence to the team about the relationship she had with the serial killer. Paul Britton speaks to her. She met him when she was 16. When they first came across to each other, he was in his early 40s. She went for bad boys the whole of her life. She says that he did not bring anything in the relationship. Teresa's friend Irene was going out with Jack Mulcahy, Maureen's brother. Jonathan gave her a magazine on the unsolved murders of the Landasi girls. He says imagine what they went through. One night Jonathan took Teresa out on the field where girls were found dead and had full sexual intimacy with her. Teresa went inside the car with Paul along the same route they had 30 years ago. Paul is saying this where Maureen's body was found. On this occasion they did not have sex at that time. He enjoyed going back to these scenes to reflect with pleasure what he did. According to Paul, Dr. Collins says that all you need is the DNA on the clothing to rule in or out of the case. They met one final time to potentially present their new evidence to the police. As a suspect. Like, share, comment and subscribe.